This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions.
This is Joe Rabil, and today I'm going to answer some questions I've gotten recently from subscribers. And what I want to talk about is both when to use a daily chart for a signal and also when to use the RSI as a trading signal. So I'm going to go through that, and I'm going to use PayPal as an example. Let's go ahead and get going. Some of these concepts, though, I think if you're interested in, I would suggest starting with the book. You can find it at rabilstockresearch.com/book in a PDF format. I'm offering it at a discount. Okay, so I've got my charts of PayPal up, and I want to just give, first of all, I'm going to start with the monthly. Just to show kind of what is intriguing about this. There's a couple of things that happened as this was dropping down to a new low here. MACD, not only was MACD making a higher low, showing divergence on a monthly chart after a massive decline, but it's also a, let me just show you how this played out. We can zero in on this a little bit. So when it rallied up here, the MACD had crossed over, and then it pulled back, and it basically formed 2 to 3 lower highs. You know, maybe this was not a lower high. It's not even worth worrying about, because at the same time that was happening, I would consider that a pinch right at the 18, but it was also a counter parallel lines. It's another pattern from my courses. And what I would tell you is that when we see this happening where MACD is holding while price is right in the area of the 18 MA, we want to be on alert, all right? Because any move back above the 18 MA likely means that we're headed into the next resistance zone. In this case, I think it's up around 100. So we have that kind of in our back pocket. Now, when we look at the weekly chart, we're essentially in a low ADX condition, right? I mean, we've got this low ADX pattern. Green is actually above, which is a really good sign. But if you look at where it broke out from, let me just draw this out a little bit better. You can see that we were up 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. It's very difficult to play the breakout pattern on a 4-week up move, because essentially you're buying overbought. I mean, I like to buy either on the first bar, second bar, third bar is pushing it. All right. I typically like to buy a breakout or a trigger on the first or second bar if it's going to take place. All right. In this case, it was the fourth bar. So I'm not buying that breakout. All right, what I'm going to look for is the first pullback. Now, if the ADX is really strong, you're not going to get a pullback to the 18. So if you're sitting back here waiting for this to come back to the 18, I'm going to buy the pullback, you're going to miss this trade. It's not going to, you're just not going to get an opportunity. So in cases like that, all right, there's a couple of things you can look for. In fact, let's show you what could have happened, which did not. We didn't make 2 lower highs. It was trying to form a pinch play. It didn't really do it. It was so quick. All right. Now, the other thing that took place, because it was so quick, we did not get the RSI buy signal on the weekly chart. If you notice, we had a move to the upside. We pulled back, but it was so brief that the RSI 5 did not get back below the 50 mark, all right, which is our RSI buy signal. Go back through some old videos on RSI. You can search for it. You'll find I've done 2 or 3 on those. So we know we didn't get that on the weekly chart, all right? And so your option is, okay, I've gotten this little dip. I'm in support. I could play it daily, hourly signal, all right? I could go down to the hourly chart and look for a trigger. But what I find is a lot of guys just don't have the time to go down to the intraday time frames, and they don't want to sit there and watch the hourly go by and all that. So what I've done is said, look, go and look at the daily chart and look for that RSI signal on the daily. See how we came down? We got an RSI buy where the red line, which is the RSI 20, held above 50, and the RSI 5 actually not only got below the 50 line, it got down all the way to the oversold area. All right, so we can look for our first higher pivot low. Again, that's right out of the course. If you want to learn more about some of these details, I would suggest going with the course. It goes through so much detail on a lot of the types of things that we're talking about. All right, so that is one way to do it, right? You can do a RSI buy signal on the daily chart. Now, because this is a turnaround and we're looking at a monthly parallel, counter parallel lines and a weekly breakout, you might not want to play this off of a daily signal. You might not want to do a weekly daily. You might want to get this off the monthly and the weekly, all right, and look at it as a bigger picture play. And if you want to do that, I'm not telling you have to, but I'm saying if you want to do that as an option, you can take the trigger, you can take this RSI buy signal here as a trigger, but then use the weekly risk that I suggest. I use 2 ATRs on the time frame that I'm trading. All right, I don't trade off the monthly chart in most instances. Obviously, when we go and look at the 401ks, I talked about the ETFs. If you do a quarterly, monthly, yeah, you're going to be having a trigger off the monthly chart at times, and you will use monthly risk. But the majority of the time, when it comes to stocks and trading, typically looking at this as a upper time frame, a higher time frame, and this as the lower time frame. Now, you can trigger off of this minor time frame and then use the risk on this time frame. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Essentially, what you're doing is you're getting in on the breakout pattern, but you're not buying the breakout. You're waiting for more confirmation with the higher low. It just happens to only trigger on the daily chart. Now, when do you use this? When it happens, when it triggers. So let's just say this comes down and we get the 20 to overrun on this pullback, meaning we don't get a good RSI signal on this time frame. Well, then I'm not going to do it on this time frame. I'm going to go looking for that on the weekly chart. I'm going to look for the next time frame up. So if I get a signal on the daily chart, so if I get a breakout pattern, I'm going to go looking to see if I get an RSI signal on the daily chart. I'm going to go see if that happens. If I get that RSI signal on the daily chart, I am going to take it. All right. But depending on how much I like the longer term time frame, the monthly and the weekly, and how long of a base it's formed and how much upside potential there is, I might actually take the risk off of the weekly chart rather than the daily chart. You know, you're welcome to do it either way. This is a personal preference. I'm not trying to tell you one way or another. But what I will say is that you take the first signal that comes your way. This ensures you that you don't miss the trade. All right. Now, if you take this trade and you get stopped out, it's possible, right? You could take a trade and it can get stopped out. If you're not willing to do that, then you probably shouldn't be trading. But it might happen. Then we're going to go and we're going to look and see if the weekly chart sets up. So you might end up taking a single loss there and then have to take another entry, all right? You take 1 unit of risk and you lose, right? The next unit of risk, let's say you get in the next unit of risk, hopefully you can make 2 or 3 times what you risk on that next trade. All right. So it's just a numbers game. You have to treat this like a video game in some certain instances. And what I'm telling you is to go ahead and take that first trade using the daily. If you have to use the RSI based on the way the stock broke out, that's probably my favorite way to use RSI. All right. There are a lot of times where the RSI signal will come just before the breakout on the weekly chart. I've done a video on this in the past. I did it through stock charts. Definitely something to be on the lookout for. It's a way to anticipate the breakout. In this case, that didn't happen. But what I'd be looking for is my next entry. And in this case, it was an RSI signal on the daily chart. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.